Paul. How are you?
CB, CB, how are
We
you?
laughing already.
Yeah, wow. Is this on? Is this
Yes,
on?
I could see you missed your calling.
Oh, I had it. I actually had a little bit of it. I got to experiment a little bit on stage and so forth. I had a little bit of that. Yes, yes. I
Well,
always love to do that. I get cracked up. It's like no matter how many meetings we have had, sessions and the virtual sessions, just to you've got to lighten stuff up.
you
Light
do.
life has to be light. And
Absolutely.
it's so heavy right now. It's like everyone's carrying like an 8-piece Samsonite set of luggage on their backs every single day. And they just ask for more. And it's like, oh, you got to lighten it up, even if it's just as a quick smile or a quick laugh.
It's so
Yeah,
true. Oh my gosh. I'm right there with you.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so everyone, we're here to talk today. First of all, this is being brought to you by the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches. And what this is called the Challenges of the C-Suite. And here we work at discussing some of the major issues that executives in the C-suite fall victim of, solve, whatever you want to describe it. But our purpose is to have some lightness, but have some serious lessons in how do you solve these mega problems when you're in a role that's all by yourself. So today we've invited the amazing Paul Larsen, who is an actor. No, he is a master corporate executive coach with the association. And you
You've invited Paul Larsen because we can't get anyone else to answer these questions today. So Paul's here right now. I'm sorry.
oh my God. People are just not even going to believe you now.
I know. I just trashed my credibility. I'll gain it back. I promise you.
Okay. Well, I see in back of you the book that you've written. You want to bring it up close to the other
absolutely. Here it is.
Find your voice.
What a surprise. I just have it in my house. What do you think? Yes, thank you. Thank you, Steve. First of all, this is indeed an honor. I mean, it's an honor with all of our joking aside for just a minute. It is an absolute honor to be here with you, to have some fun, but have some actual practical tools or solutions for people that are looking for, how do I lead in this time and so forth. And yes, I wrote the book, Find Your Voice as a Leader. Boy, I wrote it in 2016. And I dedicated it to my late sister, who was, I think, by far the most honored C-suite leader I've ever met. And although she did not work in a Fortune 500, she had a Fortune 500 family. She had 7 children.
Oh my gosh.
And she worked full-time too as a special education teacher. So very, very special lady, very, very special sibling, sister, friend, and miss her dearly physically, but I know she's guided me. So wrote the book in honor of her and to help kind of ourselves out around how do we lead and how do we use our voice in a very positive way.
So can you give us an example that's in the book?
Absolutely. So let me check first. No, absolutely. It actually goes back. It actually goes back to when I was at Adobe Software, Adobe Technology, and my father had passed in 2009, and I was sitting in memorial service at a church, beautiful church in June, and listening to people. He had a wonderful, blessed life, and listening to people come up and they go now at memorial services. You take the microphone and you talk about what the individual meant to you. And by the way, at those types of services, you want them to talk really good things about you, right? And they're just going on about what a wonderful man he was and what he meant to them in their life. And CB, there were people coming from neighbors 50 years ago. There were people coming from all walks of his life. And they were saying, oh, I remember when he went out and I was ill and he got me some bag of groceries. And I'm sitting there like, I can't even remember where I went shopping last week. I'm like, wow. And I knew this about him. He was absolutely just a dear, incredible, incredible individual. But the more I heard this legacy about him, this voice, the more I sat there and I thought, it was one of those moments, CB, in your lives, because you kind of have been broken open by in this case, a loss. I sat there and I said, what are they going to say about me? Literally, I'm in the church looking at it. It's like one of those case studies we read about all the time. And I sat there, I was looking up and I was like, what are they going to say about Paul? Like, what are people going to say that I did in for them, or I what did I help them with, or how did I impact their life? And I'm like, oh my gosh, Paul helped me create a sales incentive plan that saved the company, $500,000. Paul helped me interview 400 people for this role. Paul helped me restructure the organization and lay off, 750 people and saved us over $2 million. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh no. That was not going to be my legacy. That was not going to be what I wanted to be known for. I appreciate all, the things I've done in my life, but I thought I have more to give. I have another message. And that was the very first seedling, so to speak. And I think it's a kick from my dad, kind of the kick in the butt. That's him right above me over here, or kind of over here.
The other side.
Yes, ask me for directions. I'm really good. Oh, I'm really, really good. Ask me for directions.
Well, my dyslexia is contagious. So
that's what it. Okay. I love you. I love interviewers that just will share and just give the interviewee off the hook. I love that. Fabulous. So anyway, long story short, that was the seedling of, I have something more to give. I have a voice. What I was hearing was my dad's voice and how he led and what he did and how he impacted this. And I realized in that moment, I wasn't quite sure what, but I realized I had something to give. I had a voice. And so that was the time that I said to myself, I need to go do something different. I need to, the word we use nowadays is pivot.
Yes.
I'm going to pivot. But I was going to just change whatever I was doing. I had a wonderful job. I had a wonderful company, wonderful people. I could have stayed there for the rest of my life, but I would have not been engaged. I would have not been inspired. It would have been forced action to continue that, which many people do in their lives. And I decided I needed to make a change. And the one thing that I heard my dad's voice always in that is, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that could happen? And I asked myself that, and I said, okay, the worst that can happen is I fail miserably. I embarrass myself and maybe some other people. And then I go back and I get another job, and it's like, okay, I'm fine with that. I'm like, look at me now. Look what, I'm okay to embarrass myself. I'm okay if I fail. I will learn. I've done that, and I can always go get another job. There's plenty of roles I could go out and do.
What you just said is really the formula for success. It's just not being afraid to fail, knowing that you can always go back. But even if you go back, you're going forward, right? Because you've learned something.
Absolutely. And that's the key to what we do, right? As coaches, it's to really realize that sometimes we do go back, but we don't anchor ourselves back there. We release whatever it is to move forward and to always sort of have that forward momentum. And to ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen here? And then to be like, am I okay with that? And to answer that honestly. And I was like, yes, I am okay with that, because the benefit of what I could get, the benefit of what I could give, the benefit of what I could experience is so greater than being stuck somewhere by my choice.
Yeah.
In something that I wasn't as engaged around. Again, nothing to do with the company. Beautiful company. It was where I was up here. It's where I was in my life. And so that's what got me all started on going out and really kind of like figuring out what I wanted to do, and do I consult, do I coach, do I do a combination, and all those things. And the universe has a way of kind of leading you if you're open to it.
Yes.
Your universe, the source, whatever faith, whatever people want. But if you're open to it, like you can kind of figure things out. And I'm really happy. I dabbled here, I dabbled there. I had some wonderful new opportunities and engagements from a consultative standpoint. And then I just said, you know what? Knowing myself as an introvert, knowing myself that
An introvert. Come on, Paul.
Yeah, I'm an introvert. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, because here's why. I love that response. I appreciate your response. I get my energy from within. And we talked about my sister briefly. My sister was what I call a raging extrovert. She had to have people around her 24/7. Like 12 midnight at Costco, 12 midnight, like she just wanted everyone all the time. And to me, that's like, it just is exhausting. And it's emotionally exhausting, and which manifests also into physical exhaustion. So I love people, and I can be expressive. You know, I'm very an expressive kind of person. I enjoy that. But when I need to recharge, when I need to sort of like regroup, when I need to reboot, I have to be by myself. I need that time. And I, you know, and when I was in the corporate world, you know this, it's like there's always these meetings, and then you go out to dinner if you're like, and then you got to go network, and then it's like, I've got to have at least 10 hours before the next day so I can like be by myself. You know, it's like,
I understand completely, because guess what? You're speaking to a fellow introvert.
there we go. I thought there was a kinship.
Yes.
I thought there was a kinship there. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's really interesting thinking about it now. We're talking about it. There were so many times where you have to do certain things. You just, for the nature of the role that you're in, you have to go to that meeting, that networking event, that cocktail party, that baseball game, the dinner. All of that's great, but you don't really, you choose, I would much rather go back to the hotel room and sit and watch TV on the, you know, like,
but we get upset when we're not invited.
Exactly. Oh, of course. Oh, of course. I still do.
Yes, yes.
And social media creates even havoc for me on that. It's like, what's going on here? No. I want to be part of that.
Yes.
But you know what? I can't do that right now. But thank you for inviting me.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
And I think, you know, when I realized I was an introvert, which was one of my wonderful managers way back at Charles Schwab, way back in the 90s, you know, kind of pinned that on me to say, I think you're an introvert. And at the time I thought, oh, you're crazy. I said, I'm an extrovert. And of course, it turns out I wasn't. Once I realized it and embraced it, it has made me such a more robust coach. And it's been such a wonderful blending, because as an introvert, you wouldn't know this right now, but as an introvert, we listen, you know, we observe,
yes,
we process here before here. There's so many things that I use in coaching that I know is intuitive to my style.
Yes.
And my style of being an introvert. And I've honed that even more.
So what are the rest of your call letters?
My call letters on
Myers-Briggs.
Oh, INFP. INFP.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So feeling, definitely, intuitive, definitely, perceptive, you know, the absolutely all of that. There's sometimes I could have sworn I could have been an INFJ. Is it J? I think it is. Judgment.
Yes.
Because the judge comes up, and I've just gone through the positive intelligence, Shirzad's positive intelligence curriculum, and I just signed up to get certified in his whole program. So
great.
So the judge, I've learned from the saboteurs.
I hope you got the ACEC discount.
I'll talk to you about that later. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
It's beautiful. Wonderful. It's what beautiful. And he's incredible.
Yes.
His work around that on the saboteurs and what comes up here. But I realized early on, I have a strong judge, and judging can be a strength in terms of discernment, but an overuse of that can get in our way. And so I had to put all that aside when I wrote the book, and I went on my own as a coach, and to really realize if I really want to help people, I have to meet them where they're at, and I need to do enough work on myself around that. So that was sort of my whole philosophy around leaving the corporate world, dabbling a little bit in the consulting world, and then really fine tuning it to say, coaching is really my inspired action. It's my inspiration for the world, and that's what I'm meant to do. And it just all kind of clicked. And go ahead.
As a master level coach, don't you find that you use both, wink wink, coaching and consulting with clients depending upon the need?
Well, I don't know if anyone ICF is listening to this or not, but here's how let me tell you how I approach that. When I coach, you are getting my experience of life, period. You're not getting a little slice of me. You're not getting just what I experience today, right now with you. You're getting my overall all experiences. My good, my bad, my ugly, my failures, my successes, my mistakes, my recognitions, everything. You're getting all that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have some of that can weave its way into the coaching partnership, into what that person in their life is experiencing, where they're at and where they want to go, absolutely. I mean, I'm very upfront with that when I meet potential coaching partners or coaching clients, to basically say, this is how I coach. This is my philosophy. I can wear different hats, and you will know those different hats because I will absolutely be very deliberate with those hats. I know for the coaches I've had, the ones I've tended to more align with and have probably just incredibly taken off with are the ones that can kind of meet you in the different scenarios.
Yeah.
Kind of like what we're doing here. You have a structure of the interview. I'm sure it'll appear sometime, but you have a structure for the interview around what we're going to cover.
Well, we already blew that, so we'll have to do another interview.
But we're already going through. But that's the beauty of this, right?
Yes.
Is we're meeting each other where we're at, but our heart is to serve the audience.
Yes.
And telling our stories through that, and that's what coaching to me can be. And I think in today's world, I mean, the topsy-turviness and just everything, and it's the new world order.
Yes.
That's the way it's going to be. It ain't, none of this is changing. So that's what I love. That's what I love around coaching.
So now that you've brought up the new normal in coaching, that leads me to a whole bunch of questions. First of all, how do you see coaches playing a role in this new normal?
Wow. That's the answer I have immediately is, how do they not? I mean,
what do they need to change?
Yeah, hello. That's a different question. You've got another hour for that. But first of all, coaches partner with people to help them realize their potential of where they're at and where they want to go. So if you think about that in today's world, where we're at and where we want to go, how can coaches not help? How can coaching as an industry not be the calling for what we need for the future? Now, to take your other question there's a little bit of, I don't know if the word is structure, protocols, rigidity, even I would even go to say sometimes a fixed mindset around what coaching is and should be, and what coaching isn't and shouldn't be. And I run into this all the time because I'm like, well, then call me anything you want. And maybe I'm not a coach compared to what your definition is. I don't know. But I tend to be successful helping people because I help myself as well. My point is, we have to learn to be very resilient. We have to learn to be very just in time. We have to learn to be to bring up the pivot word again, but we have to learn to finesse and pivot based on that. It doesn't mean we take away the heart of coaching. It doesn't mean we take away the expertise of coaching, but we have to learn as an industry and as a global community that we can't apply that model that we have. It's like the square peg into the round hole or vice versa. And a great model that's not working right now, we can see, is education. We are using, especially in the States, we're using a model that was created decades and decades ago, and it ain't working. And it's certainly not working now. And that's a whole nother obviously solutions and discussions, but that's what we don't want in coaching. We don't want to take the models that we have that can still be applied, but we have to look for ways in which to be much more with our finger, much more in the pulse point, and much more whatever that just in time is. And that, I hear the word or the phrase just in time sometimes thrown around, and people are like, oh, that's like coaching by text. And I'm like, you're going into the modality. You're going into you're thinking of the app or the text. It's like, it's not about that. It's about reaching people where they're at and getting them to the next and to help them with that. And if that happens to be by text, if it happens to be by Facebook, it's not just that though. We're coaching the whole person, so we have to use the whole environment. In other words, I just don't coach it. Like when I hear coaching by text, I'm like, I'm not going to have a relationship with somebody and just coach them by text. Now, do I have clients where I've coached by text before? Of course, but I'm also coaching all of them, and I'm coaching the whole environment with them. So we have other types of methodologies and modalities, and I think we get lost and we get reactive to the app or to the process or to the technology. It has nothing to do with that. If you
especially are trying, you're not fluent in, right?
Exactly. If coaching's in your heart, come on, coaching's in your heart of what you're supposed to do. It doesn't matter how you do it. You will be successful with it. And if you are like that, and I think I'm a firm believer in to be a really relevant coach, I have to continue to grow. I have to continue to understand who I am and what makes me a better person, a flawed person, a person, in order for me to show up as a coach. And so that's how I approach everything. So for me, I don't care about the app or the technology or any of that. It's about how do we meet folks where they're at, and what do we need to do with that. And case in point, traditionally executive coaching can run anywhere from 6-12 months, even longer, right? You're in these relationships that are some of my clients are 12 months or more, minimum usually 6 months in terms of just the engagement, the one-on-one. Is that going to be sustainable? Probably, but will it have to sometimes change and finesse? Absolutely. Will there be other opportunities for other types of modalities or pods or any types of ways? Of course. So to be open to that. But when I hear the, we don't do it like that, or no, you can't, that's not coaching. What they're doing is not coaching, or what she's doing is not coaching, and what he's doing is not coaching. It's like, who am I to say that? So yeah, coaching is definitely the, a model. It's kind of like, wouldn't it be great, CB, if coaching was just something that everyone had a coach?
Oh my God! Of course, right. Of course, yeah.
And if you think about it, I don't know. I remember back in corporate days, early on corporate days for me, we use coaches, but we only use coaches sometimes to save people.
And that's the problem.
Right.
We got a bad rap.
Right.
That if you see a coach coming in to
They go,
work with
"Ah!"
an executive, it's like, oh my God, they're on their way to being fired.
Right, exactly. It's
You know?
like it's the last resort.
Yeah.
It's the last resort. And there's still some validity to that. And I know it's still there, obviously. But coaching is now, and I do think there's been a shift. I see with some of the larger organizations, and then that has trickled out and perpetuated out to many organizations where, no, I want to coach. I see the benefit. I want to grow. I think that's, I'm decades and decades and decades old. I see some of the younger generations. I think some of the folks that are my clients, which are in that generation, but they embrace it. They're like, grow me, grow. I want to.
They align it much better to coaching in sports, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. You're going to have a coach so that you can perform better. You can increase your income. Right?
Yes. You can maximize.
Exactly.
Whether it be revenue, knowledge, experience, your heart, your brain. It's all about maximize.
Yes.
And to do it in such a way that it can be in a safe way, because you're working with someone who you trust and respect, and they're creating that container for you. Oh my gosh. I mean, just think about, like if families and people had opportunities for coaches in all walks of life, in all different societies, in all different communities. I mean, who knows what kind of society we might have today if that was the case. But let's not worry about that. Let's look at what we can do for the future. And I just think there's enormous opportunity.
Not to interrupt you, but at the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches, we have an expression that we support coaches in becoming enterprise-wide business partners. To us, the next level, and you're a member of the organization, the next level up from being a master corporate executive coach is an enterprise-wide business partner with your client. What does that mean to you?
Fully integrated, fully blended, fully in, I'm sorry?
What does that mean?
Oh, to be sort of one inclusive, that there's not a separation. When so case in point, when you talk about a certified coach, a master level coach, an associate level coach, you're still talking about a coach. You're still talking about a coach who is outside, who's more external. And it's not about inside or outside the company. It's a mindset. And so when I hear enterprise-wide, business partner, thought partner, practice partner, it's a partnership all around. It's a 180 partnership. It's somebody who is for your success integrated into your life. And the life is defined by whatever that enterprise is, certainly in the business. But we've seen, certainly since I've been in business, we've seen the whole work-life piece change dramatically. The work-life balance stuff, I don't even know what that is. It's life. It's life. And then I look at it's just not work and life, it's life. And then we have different parts of our lives and how we blend and integrate. And I've always done that in my life. And so I look at the enterprise person, the enterprise business partner, the enterprise coaching partner, the enterprise coaching sponsor, the enterprise coach for you to be part of that. And to challenge that a little bit, maybe the definition might change depending on the individual or the community, because what that might mean for that person might be a little bit different for this person because of where they're at, where they're at in their life, where they're at in their community, where they're at in their business. So I just think it's much more fully integrated. I don't think we have the models in place for that right now.
That's true. We're working on that.
Yeah. Oh no, I think you guys, we are doing, ACEC is incredible. That I'm kind of talking larger scale and everything.
I agree.
It's also a mindset.
Yeah.
it's a mindset shift in terms
And
of
I think a lot of that is fear that's preventing that from happening, because you and I agree on the terms, and to us, enterprise-wide, you're not just coaching the individual, you're coaching their entire environment. And if it's in a corporate setting, then you have to know what's going on with the organization, with its employees, with its competition, what is its market share. And it's not saying that you need to be a business coach, which some people are afraid. It's saying that how can you coach in isolation of having this data?
well, I would argue you can't and you don't and you aren't and it doesn't. I mean, I remember when I first kind of got into the leadership coaching, executive coaching, and it's sort of like, oh, you coach leaders in organizations. Well, that's kind of where they are, but I'm coaching the person in their life. The organization's a container. I'm brought in to their container. That's a laboratory for them. That's one lab. They put on the little coat and they go in and and they put their little beakers and their little microscope and we have some fun. Then they go to another lab, which is outside of that. Then they have another one. I bring all that in. I'm very clear with my clients on that. You of course you and Marshall Goldsmith are incredibly bonded in the sense, and you've done wonderful things together. But
yeah, he came to my wedding.
Your wedding. There you go. Not many people could probably say that. Okay. Not many people could say that. But Marshall's stakeholder-centered coaching, and I got certified in that a few years ago because I liked, and I love to get certified in lots of things, but that's one that I think the philosophy of that is you have these stakeholders in your life, not just in business, who want you to succeed. They're not sitting there waiting for you to fail and like that, like we all sometimes think they are. No, they want you to succeed. And how do you engage those stakeholders? And how do they provide you feedback ongoing? And in Marshall's in that whole framework, because we're in the business world, some of the stakeholders are certainly people they work with, of course. But you know what? And they've had great examples. Frank and Chris and Marshall have wonderful examples of people that in leaders that have stakeholders outside of the business. And so when I've been coaching leaders, and I do a stakeholder interview.
That comes from the business world.
Of course.
Yeah.
And
when you look at a SWOT analysis of a project or an event, you're looking at external stakeholders in order to get a full analysis of the situation.
Of course, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But somehow and maybe this is wrong of me. This could be a myopic vision I have of coaching. Somehow in coaching, it's gotten more narrow sometimes.
Yes.
And because when I work with leaders and I'm going through like their behavior or their 360 or their stakeholder interviews and things like that, I'm asking like, give me somebody outside of here, your family, your friends. Give me somebody you hang with. Give me somebody, and they're like, huh? And I'm like, look, I said, do you think you change when you come in? Your behavior is your behavior. We usually have legacy behaviors that we bring in. And usually the organization then has a way of magnifying those behaviors. But I'd like to see like where that else shows up for you. That's why one of the most powerful questions I've heard in coaching sometimes, if you think about it, it's kind of common sense, is where else does this show up for you in your life? Because it's a nice question. It's a common question. But when the person hears it, they're like, wow, that's powerful. Because they haven't thought about where else that might show up outside of these, whatever we are now, Zoom walls, whatever those corporate confine is. But if a leader behaves a certain way in an organization, they're behaving that way elsewhere. It's not like they put on the behavior jacket, do that, and then take it off and walk out. I have not seen that. And I'm also putting myself into that. Having been a leader, having had 360s, having had coaches, I know. And I could tell the coach that coaches me just in that framework right there, like how you doing, versus the coach that coaches me like this and says, let's look at your world. because that's where the difference is going to be made if you take some small steps with your thoughts and your actions.
Let me ask you a timely question, and I didn't mention that I was going to ask you this. So get ready.
Okay.
Do you feel that coaching minorities is different than coaching non-minorities?
No.
Really?
Yeah. You know why?
Why?
Because you're coaching the individual. So you bring in their worldview. If you respect somebody's worldview, then, and if you have done enough diligence with that, then there shouldn't be any difference around that. Does everyone's worldview, everyone has a unique worldview? But if I'm coaching in a female, different cultural ethnicity, different, whether it be white, black, yellow, brown, different geography, it doesn't matter. Age, all those things that come up with minorities, even some minorities we don't even know about.
No.
Some minorities we don't even know about. So if you bring out their worldview, if you bring out what they have experienced, and you bring that out into their narrative and to their story, you can coach the coach to that. Now, will that be different than the client over here who has a different worldview, but still might look like this client? Yeah, it's going to be different because I'm localizing it for the person. But I'm very careful to go before I go into any kind of coaching engagement or partnership to say, oh, I'm coaching this person, and I bet they're going to have this because they've been marginalized or that. Now they might have had that experience, but their reaction to it and what has happened from that might be very different than somebody else.
Mm-hmm. What about the assessments that we use? Because there are so few Black executives at the top of the ladder, and most of the assessments that we've used have been tested on non-minority people. So how do we get a good balance if we're using an assessment on a minority person?
Starts with thoughts. So you're absolutely right. So to go back to your original question, I don't think there has to be a difference in the coaching methodology or modality. In fact, I would say we don't want to have a difference. We actually want to have a certain consistency, at least in our own individual coaching. But then when you look at the systems we have in place and you look at the process we have in place, and this has everything to do with, to your point, assessments, tools, everything. Those have all been created by white people for the most part, and gender-wise, male white people, and usually of a certain age. And they've been tried and true. Do those have to be changed? Absolutely. And it's, in today's world, when we're hearing about, I use the term broken open, and it has to start up here. It has to start the equality, the inequality that has been going on forever. But now people are saying, oh, wait a minute. Wow. Okay. Hold on a minute here. It's like, yes, but before we take big action, we've got to change our mindset. So I see people that are in positions of influence and they're immediately running to action. And I don't want to dilute the action. But it's like the action may not stick because we haven't changed the thoughts. Everything that's been going on and the murder of,
they may dilute the framework of the action.
Yeah. Because to that what you just said, they're ignoring the framework. If you're running right to action, you potentially could be ignoring what needs to be done with the framework. You haven't changed the framework because you haven't thought about it. You're just running right to action. Now, it could be coming from a great place. It could be coming from a beautiful place. Like, I've got to do something.
Yes,
I've got intent. Right.
The action.
Right.
Yeah.
But I use the example, and this is a very trite example, but it's an example that a lot of people can understand. At the end of every year, calendar year, people make New Year's resolutions. And a lot of times people are saying, I want to get healthy. I want to feel better. I'm going to go, and so come January, they go to the gym to work on their body, to get better, to lose weight, and so forth and so on. And they're at the gym. And so January, this is obviously pre-COVID, but gyms are full, right? And they're all full in January, and there's weights for the cardio and weights for the treadmill and weights for this and the towels all over the place and everything else. Come mid-February, gyms are empty. And what happens there, and we laugh about it every year. We just laugh every year. And I use the example because what's changed there is only the physical action. They haven't changed their mindset. They haven't gotten their thoughts around, I want to be healthier. I need to be healthier. What does that mean? What thoughts get me stuck? What thoughts get in my way? What thoughts do I need to change around that? Well, let's magnify that now to a much more serious issue, which is the racial injustice and the racial inequality. We have got to change this. We can go out and and take action and protest and do these things which are absolutely critical. But if we don't change, and if we don't, and especially in organizations, if we don't spend some time with changing this, and it goes beyond just diversity inclusion programs, that's a start, but it's beyond that. It's mindset. We won't make any. We won't make any.
I remember when I was working for an insurance company who I won't name, but it was during the days of affirmative action. And what they did to show that they were an affirmative action employer is they went out and they hired 100 Black executives. Now, what they did is they forgot about the executives that were already in the company that were Black, that had worked their way up the system, but hadn't gotten to this level. So they totally demoralized and angered all of those people.
Right.
And then 1 year later, there was only one person left out of the 100.
Right.
So there was no engagement. There was like, oh, let me just do this. If the world's going to treat me as a lesser, then at least let me make some money on it, right?
Right. It's and what they did. I was going to say, how'd that work out? But you already said how that worked out, right? What they did is it goes back to what you and I are talking about, the art and science. The science approach, which we need the blending of both, but the science is the checklist. The science is, let's just get 100 in here. Let's just get that person in here. Let's just get that minority in here. Let's get that gender in here, whatever it might be. But the art is up here. The art is changing our thoughts and our mindset. And it's harder to do that. And it takes time to do that. And you and I both know this from organizations. Organizations don't like to do a lot of thought stuff. They get all like, oh no, you can't, oh no, you can't, because is that going to be politically correct? Oh, we might get sued or risk or and they get like jumpy about that. And but that's what requires is up here. And all the pieces around our bias and all the things that come out, which are wonderful work that is being done. And some organizations are doing that. It's incredible. But the majority are taking the action. They're acting their way to a new thought versus thinking their way to a new action.
Yeah.
And the acting doesn't always stick, as we know.
Yeah. It's the reacting to alleviate guilt. It's the reacting to appease. And, there's no motivation. There's no rhyme or reason. It's like, let's get it done so we could be finished with this already.
Right, exactly.
And what happens is it winds up creating a bigger, much bigger negative impact and situation.
Well, it also validates for everybody on both sides, but certainly the critics see it doesn't work.
Yes.
So it's just like see that doesn't work.
It didn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for the most part, most of the time, it doesn't work. It doesn't. So the critics win on that. The people who are trying and so forth, but they're working with old frameworks. Again, going back to, we have a chance on so many levels here to really kind of shape our new world order. but that doesn't happen overnight. And we're kind of an overnight kind of, kind
Yeah,
of world.
you are.
We want to see change right away. But when you think of, we've got so many things going on, and yet we have layers of change, layers of transition, and then people are reacting to those. Orgs are reacting to those. Communities are, nations are, on so many levels.
Yeah.
While we're in house, you add in all these different layers of things, and or with a mask or not. I mean, it's bad enough if I could just like eat a cookie. I mean, just wow. And we're trying to do social change through all of this. And yes, we are. And by gosh, yes. And we need to, and it's going to be messy, and it's going to hurt. And coaching is the best vehicle for that, because coaching starts here.
Yes.
Coaching. I've never known a coach. I shouldn't say that. I mean, maybe I have, but hopefully I've never known a coach that just says, do all these actions, go out and do it, and you're going to be changed. No. What does coaching do? We ask the questions. We create the environment. We have the person, our clients, along with ourselves, really sit themselves in a place and really, really kind of provoke themselves around what they need to do to change. It's not about just an action steps, which is how we are governed in our life, period. And that's the thing with organizations. Action plans, action steps, goals, all that stuff. So they approach it the same way. And I'm hoping, though, this time with the awakening that has occurred, and how uncomfortable people are, and so forth, that will make some shifts. It's not going to change dramatically, and it's going to take small steps. But small steps are sustainable, as we know from coaching. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think, amidst everything we're going through, and the loss of everything too. I mean, people are grieving the loss of what they had. They're grieving the loss of jobs. They're certainly grieving the loss of loved ones and friends and all that. I mean, but we have an opportunity to do something different, so we don't find ourselves 1 year, 2 years, 5 years in the same place. And it goes beyond all the political stuff. The politicals, again, is just the container. It goes beyond what we need to do up here.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I love coming out of this is hearing some honest discussions and dialogue. The things that have been pent up in people not knowing, being afraid to ask. I heard a comedian on one of the late night talk shows who said, I'm very tired of this. I'm tired of teaching the white person about Blackness. It's not my job.
I heard the same. I know what you heard. Yes.
But isn't it?
Well,
because if you don't teach, who's going to teach? If not now, when? If people are not comfortable having a dialogue, then how will they learn? We always say, we were raised to say, if you don't know, ask. My parents always said that to me. Yeah. Now we're saying, don't ask.
Exactly.
Law says, don't ask.
Exactly.
Right? Title VII, don't ask.
Don't ask. And that's the difference between us and children, right? Children have this curiosity. Why? And we laugh about it.
And we as parents give them permission to say why.
Exactly.
But we don't give ourselves permission.
Because then as we get older, it's like, no, we don't ask that. And in organizations, oh no, you don't question that. And oh no, that's because that's the way we've always done it. Or that's Paul's way of doing it. You don't ask Paul that. Paul, I mean, we have all these crazy norms that go on. I think what you touched on something that I think is so key. And that is the role we all have in this. And it's the shift of influence and power, because the person that is Black can speak from their experience, can speak to their influence around this, can help educate. And that's a shift. That's an incredible shift. And as a society, we see what happens with that. We see, we see the friction that comes with that, the contrast that comes with that. But we also see people that are very open to, like, help me. And you touched on it when you said, I think I had a client who is a leader in an organization at senior C-suite level, and he's white. And when all this happened, and George Floyd, his murder, and the passing of George Floyd, and all of that, and he's like, I don't know what to do. He goes, I'm frozen. He goes, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And we talked more through it, and it was like, say that.
Yes.
Say that.
Ask for help.
Ask for help. And he did. He showed his vulnerability. He showed that, and he goes, it was really hard for him. Although he is a very heart-centered leader, that's the other thing. He's not even here. He's here already, and that was hard. You can imagine that the people that are like up here all the time, but he did that, and he got an outpouring of of just support. And he had employees around the company that were saying, let me help you. What do you need? I'm here for you. And Black employees were like saying, what do you need? Let me help guide you. Like, what can I answer for you? What can I?
Beautiful thing.
It was like, but look at that. That was a micro learning, right? And it's going to make him an opportunity to be a better leader and obviously be a better person and to be a more whole person. That's just one example. Yeah. Think about how much of that could be happening around the world. But go ahead.
The fear. I will tell you that there is a group. I'm part of a group of people, and in that group, we were discussing the whole situation. And I finally had it because I said to them, the only thing I'm hearing is what can somebody else do? Let's discuss what you can do. Right. And I don't care if it's this small. Do something if you want. But don't talk about it as though it's the other person's issue.
Exactly.
So one of the people in the group, and this made me eat my words, right, formed a group of women to discuss, white women, to discuss what they could do to help their Black sisters. Mm-hmm. The group is entirely white. Mm-hmm. And so I called up the person. I said, how are you going to figure out how to help when you don't have the right questions? I said, I'll volunteer to be in your group. And she said, and it took her an hour to say no to me, right? Which I thought was it was cute, right? Because she said, well, we tried. We had 2 Black women come in, and the group was concerned. They became fearful of expressing what they wanted to know and learn. And I said, I understand that, because in many situations, you ask a question, you're going to be shut down. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you have to keep trying, because otherwise, you're just going to have to find the right person where they feel comfortable, because otherwise, what headway could you make?
Exactly.
You're trying to solve for an equation that's missing several numbers.
Yeah, I mean, without knowing any of that, and without knowing them, and without knowing that whole story, it speaks of the privilege that we have been dealing with and talking about, and that so many of us have lived in and are trying to figure out and have a little bit of an insight. But for them, but it kind of perpetuates it, right? It's like, well, we don't want you in because we don't know what to ask you, or we don't know how to ask you.
And right. Where should you ask it? Yeah.
Right. And so right there, but think about that. Now that's happening, and you made the inroad to them. But think about where that isn't even possible, or where people aren't even connecting, and that's going on.
Yes.
And here's what also will happen, and it probably has already started. You will start hearing phrases like, I'm tired of this. Yes. I'm tired. Burnout, fatigue. And believe me, it's like, I heard people like, there was an article or a headline that says, people are tired of COVID, but COVID is not tired of you yet. Like
what a great saying.
Exactly. The virus doesn't care. Right. And it is like, well, when it comes down to the racial injustice and all this, people are going to start to it's a little bit different, because it's like, they feel it's much more manageable because it has been in the past. unlike this viral thing that's like out of control. So people are going to get, I am so tired of this. I am just, I'm tired. It's like, I'm getting fatigued. Can't we just like, okay, you're going to start hearing that.
Yes.
And that's when we still need to push. And that's where coaching can really help, because it goes back to the coaching plateau, where we've all had clients, including myself as a client, where you hit a certain plateau in your life, or you hit a certain plateau in your development, or you hit you get back into the drift, and you're like, you need to like re-anchor and finesse a little bit, and then figure out how you make the next steps. Otherwise, we will just stay stagnant. And to your point earlier, we could take some steps back, which is probably going to be somewhat expected. It's interesting through all of this, some of the behaviors we're seeing. And I mean, it's just, some of these behaviors we had in California here, they printed, I think it was somewhere in the East Bay or somewhere in the Bay Area, they'd made a mural, a Black Lives Matter mural. And it was actually done by a permit and the whole bit. And this couple goes out and is painting over it. Like they are deliberately going out and painting over a Black Lives Matter mural because they didn't think it belonged there. They didn't like the message. I didn't even matter what but think about that for a minute. Like, they're out there and they're filming it while they're doing it, and they're like proud of that. Now, the part around that had a heart to it was the reaction to it was vehement. The reaction and what happened with them and so forth. There was a societal upheaval around that, around how dare you. But to me, it was almost like that's happening all the time. People are painting over murals from here, inside. That just happened to be on the street. That just happened to be in a really nice area on the street, and it was a beautiful mural. We just happened to see it. That's happening all the time.
Yeah.
And the part that I appreciated around the story was people came out and came out in defense of that mural and what the message was. But that's going on all over. And coaching has a way of stepping in. And this goes back to your thing around how can coaching do this, right? In today's world, we can't go in and do a 12-month program, a one-on-one coaching, blah, 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 like we know. We're going to have to learn how to kind of go in and put a little bit of an OD hat on, and to your point, consulting hat on, and coaching hat on, and maybe facilitator, and maybe a little bit of a director, and get in there and like intervene. And I do think there can be some coaching interventions that come in where in the normal algorithm, we would have a nice coaching engagement and intake and all that. Excuse me, we can come right in and say, okay, here's what we need. Here's where we are right now. What are we going to do to get here?
Yeah.
And that's going to take a certain amount of dancing. It's like the coach dance. And I think we have to learn to dance. And I think we've been ballroom dancing for a while as coaches. And I think we now have to learn how to foxtrot or I don't even know all the dances, obviously. But I mean, we have to learn to be much more agile and resilient as coaches.
Absolutely. I hate to end this discussion. It wasn't what we planned to talk about, but it actually works with the new service that I'm announcing, which is called Workplace Racial Equality. And it's already up on the website. It's on LinkedIn. It's a group you can join. And our focus is on coaches working with their clients to promote racial equality in the workplace.
Beautiful.
And so we want to have discussions like this. We want to have heart-to-heart discussions, because one of the things you mentioned, if you keep trying the same thing over and over again, it's going to create burnout and nothing will get done. And so we want to stop the repetitive action that doesn't move us. It's like a hamster with a Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
We want to break the cycle. We want to have real conversations and real discussions about what is it that can be done in a realistic manner.
Yeah.
I remember talking to one CEO who said, we have a program where we have a lot of white entrepreneurs coming in, and we're going to change that. We're going to support Black entrepreneurs. And I said, that's a great thing to do. When do you think you need to start to do that? He said, well, we are going to send out invitations. And I said, maybe the first thing you want to do is look at the requirements. Because if you say that the requirements are that you have to be a net $1 billion business and you want to support small Black businesses in their entrepreneurship,
Right.
I think there's going to be a disconnect.
Right.
So
Right.
let's look at the structure.
Right. And it would, you're right. If they don't look at the requirements, then it will also perpetuate the fact that, okay, well, we tried it and there weren't any.
Yeah.
And so we tried it. The other thing too on that is, and I applaud that. I absolutely applaud that finesse to go from
absolutely. That
But
awareness and wanting to do something.
But making sure they have changed up here, that they have written out some thought statements, some purposeful statements about why they're doing it. What do they want to see changed from the thought patterns so that people can subscribe to that? And if there aren't people that are on board with that or have some issue or trigger something, Goldsmith Marshall talks about the triggers all the time. And Shirzad talks about the saboteurs, the triggers. This is all based on triggers. We're triggered all over the place. If it triggers something with the people that in that particular example, why are we doing this? I don't want to do this. I don't want to, have that discussion. Don't ignore it. Don't force people into something, and then they have to be compliant. But you haven't changed this up here,
right?
It's kind of like it's the old. It goes back to when you and I have been in the corporate world, and when we're recruiting and we're interviewing and all that. Oh, we've got to have a Black candidate, but nobody really wants to have the Black candidate. But we don't have that discussion about that. We don't have that discussion about that. We just have to fill that checklist or whatever that quota or whatever it is. But we're not discussing why don't you even include that to begin with.
Exactly. Yeah.
We haven't had those discussions, and that's where it has to start. And the action can lead to that. That's the beauty of that.
Absolutely. I so agree. Hey, Paul, this has been a fabulous conversation. So I thank you so much. And will you come back to discuss what we originally planned to discuss?
Oh, of course. Oh, CB, this has been a hoot. I love it. It's been a hoot because it's been wonderful, but I love how we got into the heartfelt seriousness of what's going on today. And to know that these discussions have to take place and to be open and to say, like, I don't even know what to do. This is what I think. This is what I hope. But to be able to have such honest and genuine discussions, heart to heart, will then bring our brain along. And that's the key. That's the key.
And one of the things I would say, is if you try to have a conversation with somebody and you're shut down because they don't feel like it's their responsibility or you're being intrusive, don't stop there. Find somebody who is. There are a lot of people out there that are willing to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree with that more. And I'm an introvert too, right? We just talked about that. I agree. Like, have those conversations because you never know what you might change. And the change could be you and it could be someone else. And it may not be in that moment because we know that it has to happen usually over time. But you give people something to think about. You give yourself something to think about. And Lord knows that's what we need right now in the world. And we just need that.
For goodness sakes, don't believe everything you hear, everything you read. I remember from my
days. Don't believe everything you think.
And maybe even see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I remember from my days at the New School, which was the best education ever. Marshall McLuhan, the media is the message.
Yeah.
Meaning that your mind can be twisted and turned like a rubber band.
Oh, yeah. That's why. That's
You
that's
think
why
it's real.
that's why the media is so powerful.
Yeah.
That's why the media is so powerful. And nowadays, if nowadays you're hearing about like how do you take care of yourself through all these times that we're going through all this. And one of the things that any mindful teacher would say and does say is limit your exposure to the news, limit
Yes.
how much you watch the news. Watch it enough to know what's going on. And I certainly, I like to think of myself as somebody who would know what's going on, but I've limit myself. I limit myself. I'm very deliberate about that. And I think I know enough of what's going on, but at the same time, I'm not going to be bought into all of that because it just jumbles everything up here. And that is exactly what you just said. That's exactly why we don't change up here. We get buried in it, whether it be the red or blue or any other color in between, and we don't change. And we need multicolors. We need to have multicolors in our worldview in order to really understand and to really live in a very heartfelt way, and to bring kind of the stability and calmness we're going to need going forward. The world's always going to be like this.
Exactly.
But for us to kind of approach it like this.
One of the most powerful lessons I had at the New School was we were asked to take a headline story. And we were asked to cut out the same headline story from a Democratic paper, a Republican paper, a left wing, right wing, and we had them all lined up. And it's amazing, the same topic, how the approach, the wording.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like just out of the clip. Eisenhower asked for meeting. Eisenhower demands meeting. Eisenhower hopes a meeting. I mean, that can just totally, you have to, if you're going to be a news junkie, then be a good one. Listen to all aspects and then make a decision.
And to that point, I think we've lost that. I remember when growing up, to what you were saying, news used to be all about finding out the real story, standing kind of in the middle, the who, what, where, why, how, all the 5 W's and the whatever, all that, but really owning all that. Now, it's not so much that anymore. It's what's going to sell to my tribe, what's going to sell to my color, what's going to sell to my wing. That's what it is. And we have become that way. And so when you mentioned, you go back to the 50s, Eisenhower, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, we have just become, the news has become sort of just, there are still outlets out there, I'm sure, that do that. And in fact, some of our colleagues over in other parts of the world have news services that are a little bit more objective. But we have become just, it's master manipulation. And what's scary about that, you and I are sitting here talking about it because we can experience it and see it. There's a lot of people that don't even know that.
Yeah.
And that's the key around master manipulation. And that's why coaching is so important, because it can help people break out of that and understand that from their own sort of perspective. And they can choose then. But right now, the choice is kind of taken away from them. They just flip on the TV and it's like, and there it is, like, okay, it's truth. It's like, no, it's not. It's not.
News robots.
Yeah. They're it's all robotic. And I would even go further to say, I don't even know, some robots are smart. I think when people watch the news, they get embedded with this, like, this stilted way and view of the world. And I think it's healthy to really, again, understand what's going on, understand all the different viewpoints. But, oh my word, choose and deliberately choose. There was a study done by the National Institute of Science back in 2005. So this is like ages ago now. I mean, back at 15 years ago, we can process up to like 60,000 different thoughts in a day. Just process all the different thoughts. But they found out that of those 60,000 thoughts, something like 85% were negative. They're just negative thoughts that people just process. 85% were negative. 95% were from the day before. Just regurgitating. Because what are we doing? We're watching the news. We're reading the news. We're online with the news. In 2005, we're starting to get online. We were online, but not as much even now as we are now. But all of that. And so it was from the day before. It's just a continuum. We're not even showering our mind for fresh thought. We're not brushing our teeth with our mind. Yes. Shower our mind. Hashtag shower the mind.
Yes.
Think about it. We're not. We are picky with our food. We are picky with our clothes. We are picky with our partners and husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends. We are picky with what, everything. We are not picky with the thoughts. We just sit here and regurgitate it all. So no wonder the media, and this was 2005 when the study was done, no wonder the media can manipulate the way it does, is because we just are sitting here with processing all these thoughts, and they're just like, it sounds right to me. Yeah. So when I heard that, and I checked it out with the National Institute of Science, like, wow, that was like, we have got to bring in fresh thoughts. You got to shower your thoughts. You've got to like brush your mind just like we brush our teeth, because it's like otherwise and just amazing to me, because our thoughts create our feelings, because how we think creates how we feel, and then how we feel creates our experiences based on our actions. All related. So I've been working on that myself the last like 15, 16 months, just around, manifesting different thoughts, bringing in different thoughts, and then having those feelings, and then the actions associated with those.
Wow, Paul, you're going to have to send me a link to that study.
Yeah, I will. I'll send it to you. Yeah. Yeah, I'll send it to you. I'm glad you reminded me of it, because I love to bring that in, because it's like it was very pivotal to me, pivotal with my clients when I bring it up. But I'm glad you reminded that, because it was like, we control that. We control this. We do. We control this. And that goes back to everything you and I have just talked about. That's why we have such incredible opportunity in the days, months, and years to come with what's going on. We've been broken open again. And what we do with that is going to be up to us.
Paul, I originally said to you, this program was going to be about my asking you, what are 3 challenges that the C-suite executives face? And what's your experience around that? And what is the solution? And as we progressed, we started talking about coaching and behavior and current events. And I thought, well, I will just put this in a different series called CB Live. But now I'm wondering, we touched on some really critical thinking for the C-suite.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. I would agree. With your guidance and your facilitation and your leadership, we were able to touch on, this is what people are struggling with. And you know what? If they're not, shame on them.
Yeah.
They've
really gone off to visit ET, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like and I think we are seeing different reactions all over the place, but certainly in our country, around people that don't want to step into it. In, and it's not about changing. It's just about being open. People always think, I have to change. You're changing me. No, you just have to be open and open yourself up a little bit. And what we are seeing is, when people feel, to your point earlier, you've said it twice in our conversation, fear. When people feel fear, then they go into their fixed mindset, and they close down, and they shut down, and then they react in the ways that we see. And we're going to continue to see that, but I do think we have opportunities to help people open that. But to all coaches out there, including myself, we have to do the same. Yeah. We have to do the same. We can sit here and pontificate, and I can be on my little soapbox, or my little whatever, but I have to do the same thing. And I have to I have to test my prejudices. I have to test my tolerances. I have to test all of that. And I have, and I am, and I continually do that. And that just makes us who we are better, and we can meet our clients where they're at.
Yeah, I love the new work that's being done about unconscious bias.
Yeah, incredible work. Yeah.
You know, this is not something that we've ever talked about before in society, but it's so critical as a starting point to healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'll never forget. 1997, I went to Charles Schwab. And I headed up training for the technology group there. And we used to do a workshop called Diversity of Style. And it basically just used the DISC instrument, which is a good instrument, solid. But we had these two consultants, Keith Parker and Virginia Flanoy, I believe was the last name. They were from UCLA, from Southern California. They were both Black. They would come up and facilitate. We do like a quarterly session, and they would facilitate, a group of 40 or 50 folks. And I sat in I was in one of the sessions after I got there, and I met them, and they were just incredible. They had such an incredible presence. But I remember the very first thing they said to the group: "We are all prejudiced. We all have prejudice. Do not sit here and say you don't have that. Do not say you don't have a prejudiced bone in your body. You don't have, they were going through all the things that we say." And not just as 1997, which in the scheme of things is not that long ago, but it is that long ago. It stuck with me. And then the way they handled it, and the way they brought that in, and the way they had the discussion, and then the way they brought the disc instrument in terms of a style. To this day, obviously, it made an impact on me, because I was sitting there thinking, I live in San Francisco. I deal with all of this all the time. And I remember having a discussion with them later, and like, that statement really, like, it kind of provoked me, because I said, I don't like to think I have. And they said, do you love everyone that gets on the bus with you in the morning? Do you love all the crap that happens in San Francisco? And I said, it's like, they were bringing it out in a way. And I said, they go, San Francisco brings out all that in you because you have to deal with all that on an ongoing basis. The tolerance, the special interests, all these groups, da, 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 da. And I'm like, you're right. And they said, don't tell us, you've got these, you have your own judgments and prejudice around it. And it's like, own it. That's what they, own it. And I was like, that was brilliant. And fast forward to 2020, it's like, we need more of that. We need more of that. To your point, these conversations that we can acknowledge things and say, okay, now what? Yeah. Now what? I am intolerant about this, or I'm intolerant about that, or I do have preconceived notions about this, or I do judge this, or I judge myself too. And so then that makes me feel this way, blah, blah, blah. But it's all in the scheme of growth. And nobody, the growth mindset is messy. The fixed mindset is neat. And yeah, it always is. And so people choose neat, but the growth mindset is where it happens. But it's messy, and it's not everything's all tied up, and things are open, and things, it's like, so it's a matter of are you willing to be messy? Are you willing to really dive into who you are? And that, I think, is the question, CB, that we should be asking each other and our colleagues and our clients and the communities in the days ahead. Are we willing to get messy with this and try to find some solutions that won't come easily, but they're not going to be all wrapped up in a neat package and a fixed mindset, because that's going to be like this.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. I think we can go on for at least another 10 hours. So.
Oh, this is like fun. It's fun, but it's serious. And that's the other part I enjoy about this, is because we get to a level of seriousness, which we are having discussions around, but we are understanding that it's required, right?
And the importance of it.
The importance of it.
Yeah.
It's especially critical. So, and the work you're doing is critical. The work you do with ACEC and is just absolutely phenomenal, right? And so discussions like this, shows like this, incredibly pivotal, because this is what's going to make the difference. The big actions, they're great, but it's going to be the real pivotal, heartfelt, sustainable actions like this that will have big action and big impact.
Yes.
That's going to be key.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Loved it. Please come back.
I sure will. Anytime. Anytime. Ta-da!
Thank you. And everyone, this has been the challenges of the challenges of the C-suite. And actually, we might change it to CB Live. At any rate, this has been an incredible conversation, information and knowledge that you've shared for the C-suite, for coaches, and for just the general love of the public. And so thank you. It's been brought to you by the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches, and I'm CB Bowman. We'll see you next time around. Bye now. Okay.